What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian and Ozzy podcast. This is episode 4, and this week we're going to be talking about the Cannonier versus Gastelum card going down Saturday night, 2 days from now. And what's up, Ozzy? How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Hot off the heels of my terrible take on Jose Aldo. But we're here. We're back again, and we're getting ready for a main event that I never thought we would have: Kelvin Gastelum versus Jared Cannonier.
Yep, definitely not the most inspiring main event or entire card this week. I think there's some decent betting spots. We'll definitely have a lot to talk about in terms of the lines, but no fights that really jump off the page as exciting. But nevertheless, we'll still produce an entertaining card. But just a quick recap of the last card. It was 2 weeks ago, the UFC 265 card. I did lose on this one on official track bets, minus 1.84 units. Ozzy still ended in the profit, though, right? So give us a quick recap of your bets.
Yeah, so good overall event. Other than I think that bet on like I said on Pedro Munoz, I did take that at plus 116, and he did close. It closed basically pick him, but that fight obviously bad to read there, and Aldo, just a spectacular performance. Other than that, hit on Morales, Johnny Munoz, which was just a lock there for the most part, and Jessica Panay. I told you it's women's MMA, and it's Jessica Panay. She's gonna force you to grapple with her, and it was over shortly thereafter. Hit that sub prop at plus 700 on FanDuel as well. So it was a good card overall. Casey Kenny being the only other loser, but that was a very, very small bet. But it was pretty entertaining. I like that card for the most part, top to bottom. And yeah, we move on to this week, and bunch of MMA. So you got PFL, we got Bellator, and we got the UFC, which we'll be getting into right now.
Yep, you covered most of the stuff there. Bobby Green and Fiziev was probably one of the top 10 fights all year. It was a great fight. My quick recap is uh, Michael Chiesa really made or break the night for me. I bet him plus 125. I would do that again if they fought again. He just had a really stupid mistake not going for the both hooks in with the rear naked choke there. But, don't really regret any of the bets except for Munoz and Kenny, like you said. But that's enough of that past card. Let's get into this card because we got 12 fights going down at the Apex small cage tomorrow. I think they're allowing some fans in the Apex too for the first time. That should be interesting. And we're going to get things started in the welterweight division where we have Ramiz Brahimaj minus 140 taking on Sasha Palatnikov plus 120. You can start this one off, Ozzy. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so we got two guys here. Ramiz is still looking for his first UFC win. A guy who, I think comes from a little bit more of a grappling-based background, and that was definitely a strong point when I was looking at him for his original UFC fight. But he goes out against Max Griffin, doesn't attempt, I don't think, a single takedown against Griffin. Give that being said, really, really tough guy to fight on your, in your debut. So kind and he did last for the most part until his ear ripped off his head and he had to stop that fight. But I think I would imagine here he comes in with somewhat of a different game plan to get this fight to the ground. He has some talent, but he's just I think he has a bit of gas tank issues. I'm not sure how good his cardio really is if he is looking to wrestle. If you see, he has a ton of submissions and wins in the first round, in the first minute. He does train at Fortis MMA. He has some good training partners there. But in this fight against Sasha, I'm a bit higher overall on Sasha than most. I was on him in that Kosi fight where, I mean, go back to watch that fight because that was definitely a war. But, he didn't. I thought he looked okay against Impa. He was, defending some of the grappling, but had a crazy brain fart at the end there when he got caught with that rear naked choke. But I think overall, he can keep underhooks here, in the fight to stifle a little bit of Ramiz's grappling game and keep it on the feet where I think he can touch up Ramiz. I think he's more aggressive. I think Ramiz is a bit passive and does not have as much confidence in his kickboxing as Sasha does. And Sasha has been in Vegas training, I believe, at Syndicate MMA, and I think he's an interesting spot here at plus 120. I'm still seeing where the line's going to, solidify at. But I kind of lean Sasha here because I trust his cardio more. I think the grappling is deficiencies on him are a little overblown, and I'm gonna pick him here by late TKO. We'll say.
I like the pick. I agree with a lot there. So in Brahimaj's pre-UFC fights, I mean, he came out really aggressive, would string together a couple punches and look for that big takedown. And like you said, versus Griffin, none of that was there. I don't know if, Saif Sayu got in his head before the fight with some bad game plan, or he kind of got the UFC nerves or whatnot, but he just didn't really fight like he did in his past fights there. So he probably will come out more aggressive this time, getting back to that aggressive round one. And he very well might win round one against Palatnikov here. Palatnikov's takedown defense really isn't good. He was taken down and finished by Lazez, got taken down by Impa, got taken down by Kasi even, I think, possibly. But as long as he can survive that round one without getting submitted, I do think that Brahimaj is going to start to slow down. I think Palatnikov kind of learns as the fight goes. He got taken down initially by Impa, but was already getting back up to his feet and then started stuffing some takedown attempts as that fight went on in round one. So I think that's what's going to happen here. He'll probably get taken down initially, and then I think he'll start to, figure out those takedown attempts, start to stuff them, and start to outstrike Brahimaj. I definitely give the striking advantage to Palatnikov here. So I think Palatnikov should take over in rounds 2 or 3. My only question for you, Ozzy, is are you going to be betting Palatnikov pre-fight, or are you maybe going to be looking for a live entry spot on him here? Because I do think Brahimaj's success here is going to be pretty front-loaded. So what are you looking to do, live bet versus pre-fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think the price now at plus 120 is okay. It's not bad. So I'll definitely end up taking some kind of nibble pre-fight on him, just because, you never I never want to see a guy like, just Ramiz could be a total fraud and, not UFC level at all in terms of kind of like implementing his skills. So, I just would feel terrible if he got out of there in the first round, because I do think Sasha has some power. But you always have to be ready for these live bet opportunities when you identify a guy who builds like you saw Sasha do against Kosi, and a guy who fades like Ramiz definitely does.
Yep, I like that plan too. Small pre-fight and look to add some more in the live lines. We're in agreement on that one. We're going to move on to the next fight in the lightweight division, where we have Roosevelt Roberts as the minus 145 favorite, taking on Ignacio Bahamondes as the plus 125 underdog. I'll start this one off, and this is a bit of a tough fight to break down, because I think if it stays standing, Bahamondes is going to win. If it goes to the grappling, Roosevelt Roberts is going to win, and Roberts is probably going to look like a pretty big favorite if he's able to get this fight on the floor, because we haven't seen good things from Bahamondes, and Roberts is decent on top. He's had most of his success in the UFC on top. But getting back to the striking is where I really give the advantage to Bahamondes here. Roberts has some decent boxing, but I don't think he's really fought that many high-level strikers. Like, the guys he's outstruck are just really low-level fighters, and he was having some trouble with the striking of the Russian gentleman, Yakovlev, in round 3. And he just makes some bonehead moves, getting taken down by that caught kick versus Jim Miller. And I mean, the guy got rocked and submitted by Kevin Kroom, who was just terrible. A terrible featherweight, went up to lightweight on short notice and still was able to hurt and finish Roberts there. I know that was a small sample size. It wasn't a super replicable outcome, but come on, you gotta consider that when thinking about this fight, because that was a really bad moment from Roberts there. It makes you question his whole, career going forward. So Bahamondes, even though he lost that Makdessi fight pretty decisively, I thought he showed some good toughness. He stuck in there that entire fight. He was pumping out steady output the full 15 minutes, even though he was getting beat up there. So I think that was a pretty good sign from Bahamondes, and as long as he can avoid getting taken down here, I favor him on in the striking pretty heavily here. And I don't think Roosevelt Roberts is reliable enough of a grappler to get this fight down to the floor consistently. So I like Bahamondes as a dog here. It's a hard fight to be super confident in, because I mentioned if he does end on his back, he probably will look like a plus 300 underdog. But if it stays standing, I expect him to cover a favorite pretty comfortably. So I'll side with Bahamondes here to win the striking and win the decision. What are you thinking on this one, Ozzy?
Yeah, man, I think that, this is a very interesting, I think, well-matched fight. Roosevelt Roberts came from, I believe, that first edition of the Contender Series, and he's had all his, like, most of his fights in the UFC or in Bellator. He fought Tommy Aaron, who's, I think, what's his name? Tony Ferguson's boy. But I think both of these guys would benefit from eating more steaks and potatoes because they're like 6'1", 6'2", in the at 155. Bahamondes kills himself to get to 155. Roberts has no shoulders. He's like a beanpole, and I think he's got some good skills, man. Good attributes, and he knows what he's good at. I'll give him credit there. The Kevin Kroom knockout, kind of inexcusable though. You can't be going in there and getting hit with a left hook when you're kind of like exchanging there. Like he didn't see that punch coming at all. And just some of the ways and traps that Roberts falls into, to me, outside looking in, makes me very dubious to ever back him as a favorite in any capacity, especially here when you're going against a guy in Bahamondes where, he lost that fight to McDessie. It was pure striking, which, people hold against him. But McDessie is I don't know how many fights he's had in the UFC, but a ton of them. And
20
Bahamondes
years.
is like 23 years old. You know what I mean? So that's an incredibly difficult fight, to come into. Even if you have the reach advantage and you have this and that, it's definitely a tough fight to come into. But he has shown some deficiencies in the grappling. I know he's training in Illinois. I saw like a clip of him wrestling a little bit with Bilal Muhammad there. I think the biggest issue potentially for Bahamondes is if Roberts gets him down. I don't think he is going to maybe like put him flat down and hold him down all that much. But the neck, Roberts is a pretty versed. I think he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, but he's a legit submission grappler. I like some of the stuff that he does, both on top and on bottom, but I don't think his control is particularly that good. I remember seeing that Vince Pichel fight, them scrambling around, the Yakovlev fight, them scrambling around. The Yakovlev fight, he got a lot of his kind of like good positionings by threatening that front headlock on but Yakovlev was shooting in on him. And I think the same thing happened against Brock Weaver. That was how he was able to kind of, direct the fight to where he wanted it to go. But I don't really trust Roosevelt Roberts at all here. I think that Bahamondes has much better kicks. I think he mixes up his strikes better on the feet. And even though you can say that you think that his defense wasn't that great against McDessie, I think that some of the punches that Roosevelt Roberts throws out there are not that accurate, or like he does not have the same kind of dexterity and command of range in the pocket as you saw with that Kevin Kroom fight, guys. When the guy shows you that, you got to take that into account. Like you said, he does not have as much control and comfort in the pocket. So I think that Bahamondes, you'll probably see him perform a little bit better on the defensive side of things, and potentially keep this fight close. I see these guys maybe clinching against the fence and stuff like that a bit more than it just being at range or on the ground, like maybe more people see it. So I'm kind of leaning towards Bahamondes. I see totally why people like Roberts here, though, for sure. But just not a guy that I'd ever want to, or not ever, but just in a situation like this that I want to back as a favorite. So I'm looking at Bahamondes. I think that line could get a little bit better. But I'm not committed yet to definitely playing him though. So that's how I see that fight.
Yep. And I forgot to mention, if you like Roberts, I think you should take his submission prop plus 410. I think if he's winning, he's grappling, and I think the sub will look pretty live at plus 410 there. So we're going to move on to an elite matchup in the light heavyweight division. We got William Knight as the favorite at minus 175, taking on Fabio Cherant at plus 150. And you can start this one off.
Sure.
Incredible matchup, right?
I mean, spectacular matchup here. I mean, I'm a big fan of both guys for sure. They're Fabio Cherant. I mean, I was on Myron Dennis. I can't believe that Fabio Cherant actually won a 5-round fight. Like that's crazy. Like think about that. But came out against Menefield, and I don't know what he was thinking. It's just he has a ton of holes in his game. Cherant does, but I think the approach that he's going to have against William Knight is probably going to be just keep his distance a little bit more, pick at William Knight with that left cross and that left kick that he has, because if you start grappling with William Knight, he just has like an innate ability to just do things that you will not expect. You know what I mean? That, and that you will end up on the wrong side of. I was all over the Jung in that last fight against William Knight. It was a crazy price, that was at like minus 130, but it showed everything wrong with William Knight's game. I don't think he's really dedicated too much to train, like formal training, if you know what I mean, where,
Mhm.
he's kind of developing these skills, but the guy's, really strong. He's very durable for sure, and he can at any point, whether it be if he's throwing a punch, whether it be he's, landing a takedown, he knows that he can do damage, and he usually is looking to do damage. But Fabio Cherant, he is training down at Sanford MMA now. The line has definitely been moving in his favor significantly. People have been eating up that plus money, but I mean, you couldn't pay me to be on the William Knight side at Juice. Like, there's no way. I do have a small position on the over at between minus 125 and minus 135 at 1.5, because I think, potentially you'll see some clinching here. I think Fabio Cherant, he's not a die on my shield kind of guy. So I don't think, if he is, getting tagged, I think he will try and clinch. And, I think that William Knight will be, open to letting that happen. So I think the over is probably the best spot here. I think a lot of people are on that as well. But, both these guys, they're very unpredictable. And, I wouldn't feel very strongly about either of them, to be honest. So complete pass for me. But if I had to pick a side, I mean, I think I would probably lean Knight. Just because I think that he is more likely to just be there for all 3 rounds and, committed to offense the whole time.
Yeah, so Knight only really does one thing pretty well, honestly, and I didn't expect this coming into the UFC, but that is like offensively wrestle. Like he did it to Kamur really easily. I mean, I don't think the guy's a great wrestler or anything like that, but he knew how to win that fight. He knew how to exploit Kamur's weakness, and he easily out wrestled Kamur for the full 15 minutes. Um, the fights were a lot different how they went between Cherant and Kamur and Knight and Kamur, but you still got to look at the way they dealt with Kamur there. And Cherant, I do think, is the better striker. He's got that southpaw striking, decent left hand, and William Knight just completely wings overhands. The guy has really no striking technique I've seen except for just winging overhands. I mean, the way he was throwing those punches versus Da Jung literally looked like a MLB pitcher winding up a fastball. So when it stays standing, I definitely give the advantage to Cherant, but I still think that William Knight's going to bulldoze his way into the clinch, and Fabio Cherant loves going for guillotines. A light heavyweight that loves jumping guillotines is just a recipe for disaster, and I think that even if Knight doesn't have a good entry on a takedown, Cherant's probably going to make a mistake in the defensive grappling like he did versus Menafield and get put on his back. So I kind of am leaning Knight as well to just out wrestle Cherant, stay on top, and to be there for the full 15 minutes, like you said. But if Knight doesn't choose to wrestle here, he chooses to stand and kickbox, he probably is going to get outstruck and possibly even hurt and knocked out because I don't think he's that durable. I feel like we've seen him hurt a few times in the past. So I guess the value is on Cherant. I wouldn't be laying the chalk, like Ozzy said, on Knight, but I'm still leaning towards him. And I agree that the over 1.5 is probably the best spot here. Not a big over under better myself, but the over 1.5 here definitely stood out as a good value line. And I think that's going to cover it for that fight. We don't need to talk about it too much. Another incredible matchup, women's bantamweight division. We got Bia Malecki as the minus 160 favorite, taking on Joanne-Nunes as the plus 140 underdog. This is going to be an incredible fight. I'll start this one off. And, watching these low-level women's MMA fights coming into the UFC is often a painful experience, but not in the case of Nunes. These were some fun fights to watch. Her beating up some chubby Brazilian women in like high school gymnasiums and stuff. I recommend you go watch them. Especially the one fight where she knocked this woman out with a left cross was just absolutely hilarious. I don't know if you recognize the one I'm talking about, Ozzy, but
Bombs over Baghdad.
Exactly. So Nunes, the size difference though here is going to be crazy. I think it's like 7 inches of height and reach. I mean, Nunes is a southpaw. She probably is going to be a new look for Malecki. I doubt Malecki has trained with many southpaws, but Man, it's hard to imagine that 7 inch height differential and imagine Nunes landing punches on her. But Malecki's got no real defense. I mean, she's not a polished fighter in any area. So if it stays standing and it's a kickboxing fight, Nunes has a good chance to pull off the upset. But unfortunately for Nunes, she has terrible takedown defense, terrible off her back. I mean, I've seen her held on the ground for 4.5 minutes, 5 minutes straight, and just no ability to get off her back. So if Malecki has an ounce of sense, she's going to hit a takedown here, get her on the floor, and probably keep her there. But Malecki doesn't have super proven wrestling. I think a lot of her fights did end up on the ground, but it's not like she was hitting clean takedowns on her opponents. So I agree with Malecki being the favorite here. She's got the UFC experience. She trains with the better gym, and I guess she's my pick here, but I would really love to see Nunes pull off the upset, outstriking her somehow here. But what are you thinking about this shit show matchup, Ozzy?
Yeah, complete banger of a fight for sure. Um, Queen Bia, I've been a fan of her entire UFC career. I was that fight against, she fought a version of Nunes and Macedo before, and was somehow plus money there, which was a great spot for her. But I mean, this fight here, I would think. I mean, Bia, if you see any of her fights, she just walks forward and doesn't really care about getting hit. But this Nunes girl looks like, she's got some power. Like, she definitely hits harder than your average. I mean, the thing is, this is at 135. Like, you would think that, hey, she's like a 125, 115. Like, she's 135. So I guess she hits like harder. She hits harder than you would think she hits. Let's just put it like that. And Bia is very willing to get hit. But I would think that Bia, like you said, tries to get this to the ground in some way, whether that be with, the clinch, whether that be, crowding Nunes, where Nunes feels like she needs to latch onto a clinch, and then Bia just, hits her with some hips or whatever, and gets her down. But Bia should be able to pick at Nunes, and then when she does want to step in, throw those knees, try and throw some sticky punches where she can grab Nunes. But I mean, this is a fight where Nunes, she had, like, I don't see her winning a decision. You know what I mean? Like, I think Bia is going to be able to either stay long, or I think Bia is going to have to get hit with a bomb at some point for her to lose this fight. So I think she has way more paths to victory. Like you said, I think she has some grappling upside potentially, especially if she gets on top. I don't really see her being on bottom here against Nunes. So, the line is moving in her favor. I think it will continue to do so. But you know, uh, at a certain point, you should probably just end up passing on the fight overall. But I think it's gonna be an interesting fight. I don't know how much of a future Nunes has in this division at all. So I think it's safe to side with Bia here, even at this like minus 150 ish price. Um, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, man, I don't have that much on that. But
Yep, I
like
agree with
Bia, like I'm not, like I've been telling guys, I'm not convinced Bia trains day to day. You know what I mean? I'm not convinced yet.
That's a
So
good
we'll
point
see.
about
Let's see.
the knockout for Nunes. I don't see her winning this decision either, but the line for knockout is actually not even that good. It's like plus 450. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
think that's
trash.
worth a bet. But Malecki inside the distance, I mean, if she gets on top, like she actually does throw some good ground and pound. And like I said, Nunes is a zero off her back. So Malecki might get her out of there, which is like sheer enthusiasm with some ground and pound. And that's going to take us to the next fight in the men's bantamweight division. We got Brian Kelleher as the minus 175 favorite, taking on Domingo Pilarte as the plus 150 underdog right now. You can start this one
Yeah, I'll
off,
take
Ozzy.
this one.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is a fight where it's interesting because Keller has so much UFC experience, right? He's fought Henan Barrow, he's fought, bunch of guys, John Lineker, he's fought a ton of guys, and he draws a guy in Pilarte who I think is 0-2 in the UFC still looking for his first UFC win, and is coming off getting knocked out by a guy very small in stature, like Kelleher is going to be as well, so
Technically, that's a no contest, because Journey
technically, what did he
Newsome.
smoke? Weed or do
Oh
coke?
yeah, yep.
What
He
did he
had
do?
THC in the system, so that
PhD.
win doesn't
Yeah.
count. That win doesn't count.
Unfortunately, I think he's from Oregon, so he should get a freaking pass. But Pilates just has such a big height reach advantage. People have been calling him budget Rockhold, which is definitely accurate. But he's just not he just doesn't use those tools all that well. I remember he was going into that Vince Morales fight, and I thought Vince was going to destroy him. And somehow he's able to weather the storm. And then, he's like an avalanche. He's kind of guy where if he gets you hurt, if he gets a good grappling position, he can definitely do some stuff. And he's been out now, I think, almost is be about 18 months now. I'm not sure where he trains. I think he trains in Texas. Not Fortis though. I'm not 100% certain. But I'm from New York. I know a little bit about Brian Kelleher. I've been a fan of his, but just I cannot back him. Like, this is another. People say they're like, oh, Ozzy doesn't bet favorites. Ozzy doesn't. But I don't lose on chalk either, where, this is where, you overextend yourself. You think, hey, man, this guy's so much better. But how I pull these guys is I kind of have like a power rankings where like I don't really try let it affect me where the guy's UFC experience, if you know what I mean. Like, even if you look at UFC experience, Kelleher recently has beat Ray Rodriguez. He beat O'Day, and he's got some other win. I'm blanking on it right now. But Azure.
Yeah.
Hunter out, yeah, but he was losing that fight before he caught that knockout, and that was another thing I've been telling guys. I don't really see that. That's a point I wanted to hit on. You often see these overreactions to some knockouts where Pilarte got hit dead for sure against Newsom, but people are acting like Brian Kelleher is a knockout artist, and I do not think that is the case. I don't think he's going to be able to land that left hook. I think the left hook that he hadn't landed on Azure is probably his best punch, but I don't really think that he is a guy that has like big, a really accurate right hand or strong right hand. And he's going to come into this fight. I think his best path to victory is by submission. He's got a bad record in decisions overall. And I think Pilarte can make this fight extremely close. The only time Kelleher has been a favorite has been against Ray Rodriguez and I believe Marlon Vera in his UFC career. And he lost the Marlon Vera fight, and then he caught that guillotine against Ray Rodriguez. So, I'm not really interested in that. I don't, that doesn't mean that I'm definitely going to side with Pilarte at a plus price, but I'm getting interested soon for sure if it keeps going up. And I think that he can stay safe in the grappling. He's got a really long giraffe neck, so I think that's his biggest potential issue here. But I don't think he's going to knock Pilarte out. And I think Pilarte has some submission ability as well. Kelleher has been submitted often. He's just, he has a hard time making 135. There's so many red flags to me on the Kelleher side that I could definitely not back him at a minus price here.
I'm feeling a little more confident in Kelleher than you are, but I do have a concern about him losing via grappling here. That's really the main way I see him losing. I don't see Pilarte winning in the striking because the guy just doesn't have good defense. He is not used to getting hit. He can't really avoid punches. And he's got that tall, long frame, like you said, kind of like Rockhold, but I just don't think the guy has a good chin. He's not durable, and it's really hard to improve that even with his time off. But when the fight is in the striking, I do expect Kelleher to be winning. And if Pilarte wants to win, I think he's going to have to try to get the fight to the floor, get a back take like he did against Kolarish. And you did mention Kelleher has had some trouble with being taken down. Alcantara, Vera, those guys were able to get him. Even he was submitted by Montel Jackson after he got hurt there. But I still struggle to see Pilarte get in the fight into the wrestling because Kelleher is the decent defensive wrestler, and I really haven't seen much wrestling from Pilarte. He usually just like slips to the back and gets a back take or some sort of trip takedown. I don't think that's really going to cut it against Kelleher. I think I don't even think he got out wrestled that badly by Cody Stamann when they fought, and he was standing up from a lot of takedowns versus Ricky Simone. He definitely can be taken down, but I just don't rate the wrestling and grappling ability of Pilarte that highly. So I'll side with Kelleher here. I think he was under minus 150 for a while. I think the bets on him there were fine, but where it's at now, yeah, I do agree that I don't have much interest in playing Kelleher. I don't see much value in Pilarte either. So I think this one probably is going to go the distance. If it's a finish, it's probably going to be Kelleher knockout. But no really strong convictions on this one. And that's going to take us to the next fight, which is the last fight on the prelims. In the featherweight division, we have Luis Saldana, who is the minus 123 favorite, taking on Austin Lingo as the plus 1-3 underdog. I know you got some thoughts on this one, Ozzy, so let's start this one off with you.
Yeah, so fight here. Lingo was able to get on the UFC scoreboard in his last time out. When he came into UFC, people were definitely a bit high on him. In that fight against Zalal, he was running through a bunch of guys in LFA. And I think that he's got some skills. I think he leans on his boxing more so. He's got some good, decent movement in the pocket, and he's a committed striker. He trains at Fortis MMA. And he's got definitely has some power also in his punches. I was Kilburn was able to take a lot of those shots that Lingo was putting on him. And to be honest, I was kind of impressed because up until that point, I hadn't really seen Lingo put together 3 good rounds of him putting out offense and landing punches and doing his thing. But he did that there against Kilburn. He was there all 3 rounds. He was putting damage on Kilburn. And I think in this fight against Luis Saldana, that approach that he has is going to be to his benefit. He's going to come forward. He's going to be throwing punches. And I think Saldana is not going to like the pocket exchanges that Lingo is going to force, and then I don't really see where Saldana is going to rack up, offense that he is really comfortable with. He saw that Vince Murdoch fight. Vince Murdoch is a 135er who should probably fight, maybe even be like 115. Like, he's a tiny guy, and Saldana was able to tune him up with those leg kicks, with those front kicks. He was styling on that guy, and overall, it's just his career is not impressive. That fight against Jordan Griffin was all over him, backing him up, and Griffin, he is a UFC veteran, but he is not a very good striker. He's just a really, for the most part, a grinder. And at no point was Saldana able to put together any significant offense on the feet, get any kind of respect from Jordan Griffin, because he was not scared of his punches or anything coming back at all. And then he was able to be held in positions very, very easily by Jordan Griffin at multiple points. So I just think that, and then, it was a robbery of a decision. It's the only decision that Saldana has ever won. And if you look at Saldana, you can't tell me that you think this is a guy who, oh man, he's so good, he finishes everybody. No, he's been fighting complete bums, and he finishes all the bums. But Lingo, I don't think he's finishing him easy. I think Lingo has a lot of the advantages here in just the meta of fighting. People are talking about like calf kicks and this or that. Like, I don't really think that's really going to be an issue for Lingo, coming in against Saldana. And if calf kicks are your main offense, unless your name is Chris Gutierrez, I don't really take that too much into account. So I got on Austin Lingo early, or not that early, but I got him at plus 130. That line is short. The line's about to flip now, and I think he should just be the clear favorite here. I don't think Saldana puts together offense very well at all. But we'll see how aggressive he comes out. I think he has some tools for sure, but just his game plan and his approach to the fights, I think that it's going to be really easy for Austin to put the fight at the tempo that he wants, land the bigger punches, and be clearly run away with this fight on the scorecards, because I don't really think that Saldana is going to like that heat coming back his way. So Austin Lingo by decision though would be my pick here.
The only way I see Saldana winning this fight is him having success with his leg kicks, because you had great points about the boxing, the nonstop pressure, the output of Austin Lingo. I think is going to give Saldana problems. I thought Saldana looked good for 2 minutes versus Jordan Griffin, and then the second Jordan Griffin started actually coming forward and a little bit of that adrenaline dumped off of Saldana, I mean, he lost all composure. He was getting easily taken down. He wasn't landing or throwing much offense, and he probably will look a little bit better here, but still, he showed so many weaknesses in that fight. I just don't think the guy is comfortable when he's moving backwards. So Lingo, a guy who's tough, who's going to be constantly coming forward, even when he's getting outstruck, he's getting his nose busted up like he did versus Alal. He just kept coming forward that entire time. And Zalal actually has some pretty good lateral movement. He has some decent wrestling ability that he was able to take Lingo down with. Saldana doesn't have that good footwork. He doesn't have that offensive wrestling ability. I think if anyone's hitting offensive takedowns here, it's going to be Lingo. Lingo has hit a few takedowns throughout his career, and Saldana just doesn't look like a good defensive wrestler. He's not good off his back. He doesn't have good initiative to get off his back once he's taken down. So I think Lingo will have success here on the front foot. I think he could have success wrestling, and I think Lingo should really win the fight everywhere unless he gets his legs chopped down. He can't come forward as much as he typically does. That's the only way I see Saldana winning, and he does have some decent leg kicks, but I can't rely on that one strike in particular for Saldana to be the favorite here. So I think Lingo's got more ways to win, and I think he's worth the bet here. Plus money should be the slight favorite, like Ozzy said. And that's going to move us on to the first fight on the main card here. Great fight in the flyweight division. Probably the best matchup on the card. We got Alexandre Pantoja as the minus 175 favorite. He's 178 actually. And Brandon Royval coming back at plus 153. So I'll start this one off. And my thoughts here are Pantoja's only going to cover minus 178 if he ends up on top at some point in this fight. I think if the fight stays a kickboxing striking fight, I don't see Pantoja covering minus 178. I think that Royval, his southpaw striking, his janky, unorthodox output, I think that's going to have some success versus Pantoja here. I don't think Pantoja has the best boxing defense. He never really has. Never really prides himself on avoiding those punches. And he kind of relies on his toughness at times. And as we saw in the Matt Schnell fight, he got rocked in that fight briefly. I think his toughness, his chin is kind of depleting a little bit later in his career. So I think Royval really has a chance to surprise some people with the striking here. I think those constant jabs he pumps out, that left kick of his, he throws some good knees and elbows in the clinch as well. I think Royval is going to make this fight really competitive on the feet. The only issue for Royval is he is a terrible defensive wrestler. I mean, he was taken down so easily and so often versus Tim Elliott, and Tim Elliott uncharacteristically gassed out in that fight. But, I think if we run that back, Tim Elliott wins that fight at a pretty high clip. So if Pantoja offensively wrestles here, he should hit easy takedowns. He should keep top position on Royval. But if you go back and look at the guy's fights, he's not that much of an offensive wrestler. He has great jiu-jitsu. He's really good at taking the back and holding the back, but he's not really an active wrestler, hasn't hit a whole lot of takedowns throughout his career. So minus 178, that price tag relies on him hitting takedowns. I'm not willing to lay that. So I think the value is on Royval here at this plus 150 price. I like Royval's knockout prop for a small bet at plus 700. If Royval's winning, I do expect it to be striking. I don't think he's going to have the submissions to submit Pantoja. He is pretty good with arm bars and triangles off of his back, but Pantoja should be a level ahead in the jiu-jitsu. So the only way I see Royval winning is with his striking, and I think the knockout should look semi-live there at plus 700. So I like Royval here. If I have to go with a pure pick, gun to my head pick, I guess I'll go with Pantoja. I think he's the more overall better fighter, and if he does end up on top here, he should win comfortably. But I'm not so sure that he is going to end up on top here, and I'll be cheering for Royval to pull off the upset here. So, what are you thinking on this one, Ozzy?
Yeah, man. So I've had a hard time picking Pantoja fights right in the past. Just I don't know. The guy's an enigma to me, I guess. It's my favorite word to describe fighters that I can't get a read on. I mean, Royval, if you look at Royval, I'm way lower on Royval than you are. I know he's a black belt, but, he's like this new age black belt where these guys they just spam submissions out there. You see this both on the MMA scene and in the grappling, on the grappling scene. There's some guys that they just spam submissions. They're like, they're very good with submission defense. It's hard to catch them with submissions. And they're kind of like kill or be killed for the most part. I think Royval's like that. If you look at that fight against Moreno, Moreno has his back for like 2.5 minutes there at the end, and it does not come to Royval's mind at any point to like step on the hooks and step on that twister hook to get out of that and be able to get back to his to get out and eventually when he does, they disengage for a second, and what does he do? As soon he goes right back to his back into his guard again. So I think they are going to grapple, and at some point, grappling will happen here. Is how I see it, and Pantoja is just a much better grappler than him, positionally. Now I know Royval's probably is going to be on the ground, throwing elbows, throwing, being scrappy, throwing punches, but I just Pantoja's never been finished. All his losses are by decision. Royval's record in decisions is like 1-4 or 1-5. He's 12-6 overall. And I just, I think the striking, I think I've seen from what I've seen from Pantoja, he's just so much more cerebral now, where if you want to stay at range, he'll just kick at your legs or kick the body like he did in that cop fight. And he comes out with a much more patient approach, but he has a lot more skills, I feel, that he could lean towards, whether that be his wrestling, his jiu-jitsu, or his striking. His cardio has been a little bit suspect in the past, and Royval does push a good pace, so I think that's probably the thing I'd be most worried about if I was on Pantoja. You saw in that Asker fight he slowed down, but Asker is just has so much, I think, just better, and forces a fight that's really uncomfortable overall. And I think that it's going to be really tough for Royval to actually get, I know he's good at doing, getting the fight to how he wants it often, but I think Pantoja's approach should put him in positions where he is able to just outlast Royval and dominate him at some point on the ground. I just think that at some point he's going to be able to settle this guy down. He's going to be able to put some damage on him. And if they do stay on the feet, Royval's just high kicks, spinning back kicks, spinning back fists, all those things. I think Pantoja will be wary of those things. And you don't do all of those as much when you're pursuing a guy. You kind of usually do that when you're getting pursued. So I feel Pantoja is not going to walk onto a spinning back fist or spinning back kick or any of those things, because he's going to be a lot more patient here. So I definitely sided Pantoja here. I can't with the plus price on Royval. I don't think that he's gonna have much for Pantoja in the way of significant offense that makes him uncomfortable. So I'm gonna side with him. I think he probably gets this done by decision, but the finish is super live, I feel, here at any point. So that's how I see the fight, though. But I'm uncomfortable with paying minus 175, 170. I think you said on Pantoja, just because Royval is just a crazy dude. But I don't think he's finishing Alejandro Pantoja. If these guys fought, I mean, like, I just feel it's a weird fight. Like, in actuality, I feel like Pantoja should probably be like minus 200 over Royval, because, like I said, I don't think he's finishing him. Is he really winning a decision over Pantoja? I don't see it.
Yeah, I kind of see a path for Royval to win a decision based on winning rounds 1 and 3, because he'll come out aggressive. He could win that round 1. Pantoja slows down. He could possibly steal that round 3, but it would definitely be a shocker. And Royval knockout's actually plus 1,200 on 700, so that's definitely a decent prop there. But that's going to move us on to the next fight in the lightweight division. Another great matchup here. We got Vince Pichel as the minus 110. We got a minus 110 pick him here on both sides. Vince Pichel versus Austin Hubbard. You want to start this one off, Ozzy? What are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, sure. So, it's a fight here where, Hubbard, he comes into this fight, he's fought a lot of tough guys, on the scene for sure. But he's coming into a fight against a guy in Pichel who I've always underrated, Vince Pichel, because I didn't initially think, like, what is this guy? Is he like a strict grappler? Is he a striker? Like, he was on that tough season where you've seen a lot of guys that were a lot younger than him, just like Michael Chiesa and Ali Iaquinta come out. But this is a guy who's only lost to Gregor Gillespie, of late, and he's had his kind of career derailed by injuries. I remember I was on Jim Miller in that fight against Pichel, and Pichel Pichel was able to, find a way to win that fight in those later rounds, even though that, Jim Miller had some grappling success there. Same thing in the Roosevelt Roberts fight. That fight was kind of close, and Vince Pichel, just a super gritty dude, was able to get him down, and then start to dominate. Hubbard has just been always underwhelming to me. I think I faded him in both his last two fights against, Bush. I faded him, and definitely again with Selecki. I was all over Selecki's submissions prop there. But just I think if this fight plays out at range, Pichel, like Hubbard's main offense is calf kicks. I think against Pichel, I don't really see him landing a lot of punches there. I don't think he's going to be able to get that comfortable because Pichel is just definitely to me the much more capable and willing wrestler. And although Hubbard has shown some good get-ups, Pichel is, you've seen people speak about this a bunch of times. He is just very strong. He's like, surprisingly strong to a lot of these guys when they end up locking up with him. So I think that at some point, Pichel's probably able to get top time, some clinch control, on Austin Hubbard. Hubbard does have good cardio. It's definitely a close fight though, because Pichel, for as much of, the way that he, fights, and like I said, he looks to control the fight, get takedowns, do this or that. He doesn't put a lot of significant offense on anyone. So sometimes it's hard for him to win fights, running away, from it. But the same thing with Hubbard, which is why I think, you see this pick on price here. So close fight for sure. I'm siding with Vince Pichel. I just think that he's going to be able to take Hubbard down, and Hubbard's kind of willing, to go down at some points. I think in that third round, was it, or the second round, was it, when Dakota Bush was able to take him down and hold him down, or I've just seen him relent some positions at some points, and I think that's what's going to happen here. At a certain point, he's going to get taken down by Vince Pichel, and then Pichel's going to start putting down some ground and pound on him.
So one point you brought up that I liked was Pichel's fights against Roberts and Miller. I think he was losing both those fights up until like the 7-minute mark, and then he kind of just grinded out his opponents, found a way to win. Jim Miller is a corpse past 7 minutes. He's also really bad off his back, and Roosevelt Roberts isn't good off his back either. That's the difference I see in this fight is Hubbard isn't the type of guy to accept bottom position. Like once he gets taken down, he doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, but he's hard to get like with his shoulders flat on the mat. He's fought some good grapplers like, Ramos, and he even Ramos had a tough time with him. I think he made a decision there if I'm correct. But I don't think Hubbard's takedown defense and defensive grappling is as bad as some people make it out to be. We see like elite grapplers like Selecki are able to submit him. Davi Ramos, Marco Madsen was able to out-grapple him. But like he's able to defeat good grapplers like Bush, like Max Roscoff. And he also can hit an offensive takedown from time to time as well. He has some decent offensive wrestling. So if any fighter is getting held on the mat here for like 1-2 minutes longer, I think it's actually going to be Pichel. I don't think Pichel.
Not gonna happen.
No, I don't
Not
think
happening.
Pichel's defensive grappling, I don't think is up to the level of Hubbard's is. And Hubbard's is constantly fighting grapplers. Like it's just going to continue getting better. And I think Hubbard's a little bit better of a striker than people give him credit for. He's a real good calf kicker. I think his boxing is pretty sharp. He's got good straight punches, and his knees are also really good as well. So if this fight stays in the feet, I expect Hubbard to be winning the striking exchanges pretty comfortably here. He's going to be chopping down those legs of Pichel, and I don't see Pichel having that same momentum shift that he did in his past two fights, where I don't think he's going to lose the first half of this fight and then turn it around. I think Hubbard's a really good fight. He builds as the fight goes on. He's a good attritional fighter, and I think if Hubbard gets out to an early lead here, he's going to keep that lead and continue to win the fight. So I don't think Pichel is going to have much success taking and holding Hubbard down. I think the striking is pretty heavily in favor of Hubbard, so I like Austin Hubbard here. This is I think our first official time we're disagreeing on the pick this podcast, Ozzy, where we're going official different ways. So we'll have a little bit of a bragging rights contest next week in this one, and I got a bet on Hubbard 1 unit on -105. I cap him as the slight favorite here, and I think Hubbard's going to outstrike him to a decision. Doubt's a knockout. Yeah, I think decision is most likely Hubbard decision here. So that's
Vince by decision.
Nice. Yeah. What is the goes the distance here? I mean, it's pretty hard to imagine a finish.
I bet the over minus
Oh my
220,
gosh,
225.
-270. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I might sprinkle some on goes the distance too.
that is a juiced over. That's going to bring us to the next fight in the bantamweight division. Short notice replacement fight. We got Trevin Jones taking on Saeed Yokubab Kakhramonov. I didn't practice his first name too much, but Kakhramonov, that's pretty easy to say. Kakhramonov. Um, and this line went all over the place and initially opened up Jones -300. Jones was at an underdog price for a while. Now it's settling back in at Jones -141. Kakhramonov +120. I'll start this one off. And Kakhramonov's past two recent fights, the guy is really aggressive out of the gate. He definitely has some decent boxing. He's got good power in both of his hands. We've seen him knock opponents down with both hands, but I don't see much high-level skill behind his boxing. I don't see much defense in terms of the punches coming back at him. And when a regional fighter comes in winning fights by knockout, just running through dudes, I think they kind of run into the steeper level competition, and sometimes they get scared off and they don't fight like they typically do, like Ramiz Brahimaj, who we were talking earlier. Sometimes they come out just as aggressive as they were, and they get countered and get put out. And I think that's probably what's going to happen here, is that Kakhramonov's going to just run into a better boxer, a more crafty boxer in Trevin Jones, and Kakhramonov's going to come forward, stringing together a lot of punches, and I think he's going to get countered and probably hurt at some point here, because Trevin Jones is actually a really sneaky good boxer. You saw that in his last fight against Bautista, landed that nasty uppercut leading to the knockout there. And Kakhramonov, if he wants to win this fight, I think he's going to have to wrestle. There is some limited footage out there of him hitting takedowns. He does have a few rear naked choke victories, but I haven't seen enough reliable wrestling from him to pick him to come in here to execute the right game plan against Trevin Jones. Also, you got to think about short notice. Kakhramonov, very short notice, less than a week's notice, while Trevin Jones has been preparing for fights for a long time here. So I like Jones here. If anybody got him at plus money, that was definitely a sharp bet at the time. Even -140, I think there's some value left on him. I cap him 65% here. And maybe Kakhramonov can draw him into a brawl, can catch Jones and knock him out. Maybe he can hit a takedown here, but I haven't quite seen enough experience from Kakhramonov against good competition to pick him against Jones here on short notice. So what are you thinking about this matchup, Ozzy?
Yeah, so I think even though it's short notice, interesting matchup here. I think Kakhramonov was on the radar of the UFC for a bit. Has put some time in on the CFFC local scene, and a few other promotions there. Trains out of Team Oyama. Has some decent wins. I think I'm interested to see his approach. I think that's the most important thing to me. Like you said, he's had those last two fights. He showed significant power. But Trevin Jones, the reason I've liked him is he is very, very well rounded. He has a good submission game. He has hands. He's got some good kicks. And now he's come over from Guam and he's training full time out in Vegas. And he's putting in the time. And finally hopefully he gets this fight. He gets to the cage, because he's had three fights postponed and canceled. But I definitely see why people would want to back Jones here. I'm just slightly concerned if Kakhramonov has better wrestling. I was telling you than kind of we're aware of, and like how because I think this guy's coming in really good shape. I think that Jones is a lot more of a cerebral striker. I think it's good to look at that matchup against Bautista for, where I thought Jones won round one and then he put him away in round two. So you saw a guy who's an aggressive striker in Bautista, kind of bringing the fight to Jones and seeing how kind of he'll like stick and move and, defend the strikes as they come. And you saw that same thing in that Timur Valiev fight. So those fights are the most relevant to me, and it shows me that Jones is very comfortable in the pocket. He's very comfortable when punches are coming back to him. So I'm not as concerned with the power of Kakhramonov. But like I said, I'm kind of concerned about potentially the wrestling. This guy's from Uzbekistan, where they're really good at boxing, but they're really good wrestlers as well. And Jones on this regional tape, he's got a lot of fights on the Japanese and Asian fight scene. He had been held down a little bit, in some of those fights. So I'm interested to see how like I said, Kakhramonov approaches the fight. I think if he does, if he is in here shooting takedowns and or looking to get Jones to the ground, I think he might be able to. And if that does happen, I think he's going to prove to be a good bet. So if this line widens a little bit, I think I might take a shot at Kakhramonov. I'm not gonna try and pronounce his name again. So I'm not taking Jones here. I'm not gonna bet him. I think I know that for sure. Here. So I think if I had to make a pick, I'd probably pick. I think most people are gonna pick this to end inside the distance. But I'm not even gonna make a pick honestly here because I don't know if this guy's gonna come out bonkers or if he is going to look to wrestle. But I'm gonna side with the experienced guy. But I don't know if it's gonna be by decision or if they're just gonna bang and maybe he knocks out Jones.
Yeah, hopefully Kakhramonov makes weight coming in here on this short notice. That's going to bring us to the next fight in the heavyweight division. We got Chase Sherman as the minus 194 favorite, taking on Parker Porter plus 169. You want to start this one off, Ozzy? What are your thoughts on this another incredible heavyweight matchup?
Oof, boy. I mean, Chase Sherman, he's back, boys. Sherman, last fight, he fought Andrei Arlovsky, a legend. People paid juice on him that time, which was crazy. And, I snapped up that plus money on Andrei Arlovsky, and we saw what happened. Right after that fight, Sherman got meniscus surgery. And he says he's better than new. But anytime you take out the meniscus in your knee, it's okay, but it's not the best thing in the world. I see that Sherman's training now at Sanford MMA. He's doing all these head movement drills. He's doing all this nonsense. This is not going to help him, guys. It's not helping him. This guy is like 25 fights into his MMA career, 22 fights. I don't know how much it is. If you haven't learned a basic slip, duck, roll exit movements on your punches, is not happening. So, Parker Porter, to me, he has some grappling upside here. I think he's a better grappler. I think he could potentially land takedowns on Sherman. He's going to be probably between, I think what is Sherman now? Maybe like 250. Maybe he might be a little lighter now that he's like training down in Florida and stuff, and maybe not drinking as much beer from wherever he's at. But I think that Porter potentially could take him down. He did land 2 takedowns on Parisian in his last fight. I think what's his name, Sherman. I think he's only won 1 decision in his career. So if he can't knock out Parker Porter, I think the fight gets hairy for him very, very quickly. And that's not only because Parker Porter is really hairy. It's just Sherman, definitely fades in his fights. Porter showed a high work rate in that last fight against Parisian. He came in much better shape. I think I heard that for that Dawkins fight, he had to cut like 25 pounds or something like that. He took that fight on like 1 week notice. And I think he's a lot more. He's a lot better than people think he is. Obviously he's he's big and fat, so people underrate him there. But I think on the feet, he's going to be able to land on Chase Sherman more than likely. Sherman does have some good power in that first round, so his best path to victory is a KO in that first round. But I mean, if I think I added it up, if you add up the record of the guys that Sherman has beat in the UFC, I think you come out to like 2-9. So you paying minus 190, like that's insane. That is probably the worst bet on the whole card, in my opinion. It might cash, okay? It might cash. But that is, for me, if I'm looking at that, that's definitely negative EV. I would never do that. I would never pay juice like that on a heavyweight dude like this. Chase Sherman was this same price against Ike Villanueva. He cashed, but the fight went to the second round. Ike Villanueva's a light heavyweight. Like, this guy has no good. Literally, for me, Parker Porter would be the best win on Chase Sherman's whole record. He's 1-3 in decisions. It's just an awful bet. Why would you want to lay minus 190 on this guy? He slows down in fights. He gets knocked out himself. He has no submission game. I guarantee you, Chase Sherman is a white belt. Okay, right? What do you think he is? You think he's a white belt or a blue belt? Martian.
He's
He does
not.
not
He's not
train.
good. Yeah,
He does not train grappling, dude.
not
There's
doing a
no
whole lot of
way.
jiu-jitsu.
And he's down with Henry Hooft. Henry Hooft is one of the GOATs. But anytime you watch a video or a training clip, these guys are hitting pads, dude. They're not shrimping. They're not, working arm bars. They're not, working guillotine. They're only striking. Maybe doing a little bit of wrestling here and there. But this guy just got his meniscus taken out. You think that he's really working his wrestling? So, he's just so limited. I just cannot see why, you'd be confident in him, beating anyone, to be honest with you. So I'm siding with Parker Porter. I hope he gets it done here. And, hopefully let's go by submission in the second round.
Yeah, I like to pick Parker Porter, is a man's man when you look at him. That's the ideal man body right there. So if you're working out in the gym, trying to get like a great physique, look at Parker Porter and try to replicate that. That is my advice. And I agree with, everything that Ozzy said. Those takedowns that Porter hit against Parisian, they were kind of crafty, He had a little body lock trip there and very well timed takedowns. And that was
Porter's been training for forever. He fought John Jones back in the day.
And he, I think he's been training, posting a lot of pictures with the wrestling coach too, for whatever that's worth. But that was a high-paced fight against Parisian. Like he was throwing 30, 50, 60 strikes around, and he was also hitting some takedowns, and he still landed 50 strikes in round 3 there. Like the guy's got good cardio. That was a high-paced fight. And I initially thought Parisian sucks. My opinion of him has kind of improved. I mean, coming off the Contender Series, I was really sure the guy was awful, but he actually made a better account for himself in his past 2 fights than I expected. And Porter outstruck him pretty handedly. I think a lot of people are looking at the Dawkhouse fight for Porter and taking a lot of negatives off that. But like you said, that fight was less than a week notice. And I think Dawkhouse would probably do the same thing to Sherman. So I see this being a competitive striking fight. If anyone has a grappling upside, it's Parker Porter. If anybody has a durability upside, I think it's Porter as well, because Porter doesn't have some insane chin, but we've seen Sherman like hurt with single punches before. Like Justin Willis wobbled him. He was knocked out by Sakai. He was knocked out by Shamil. I think that was some pretty weak ground and pound from Shamil that knocked him out, if I'm remembering it correctly. But the guy's been knocked out several times in his career. I think Porter's got a lot of advantages. I think it's going to be a competitive striking fight. I don't think either guy is going to look like more than minus 150 on the feet. Like, it's going to be competitive. It's going to be high output. Neither guy has good defense. I agree with Ozzy that there's no way you could be laying this price. He's up to minus 200 now, so maybe we shouldn't be talking people off a ledge too much. Maybe we should just let people keep betting Sherman, because you might get Porter at plus 200 when it comes to fight day. But a line I like for this fight is the fight goes the distance, plus 164. I don't see this fight ending by finish 65% of the time. I think that's crazy. That's crazy.
Bro, just bet. If you're gonna bet goes the distance, just bet Parker Porter, man. Just bet. Yeah. I mean, you have to bet. What I'm saying is, if any listeners, if you guys are gonna take the goes the distance, you have to bet something on Parker Porter too. You just have to, because he's gonna win more decisions, I feel, than Chase Sherman is.
Yeah, and that line is plus 460 right now. That's a good line. I mean, sure, it's heavyweight. Knockouts can happen. I would say Sherman probably has the more power of the two, but 65% for a finish in this fight, where the fuck is that number coming from? So plus 164, I'm down to take that. I think the money line side's on Porter, and like you just said, that Porter decision prop is worth some too. Fight starts round 3, minus 105. Like, what do they think these guys are? Ngannou? I don't see it, honestly. So there's a lot of good bets to be made on that fight, and I'll be cheering for Parker Porter to pull off the upset as well. I'm picking him too. Straight up pick is Parker Porter decision. And that's going to take us to the co-main event of this card. In the lightweight division, we got Marco Madsen, minus 155, taking on Clay Guida, the legend, plus 135. I'll start this one off. I think you did the last one. So Madsen is a very limited fighter. He comes from that Greco background. He definitely has great wrestling. I don't see any area of MMA that he really exceeds in besides that. Don't think the guy has great striking. Don't think he has a particularly great top game. And I don't think his cardio is anything to rave about either. So the guy can probably win a lot of fights by staying conservative on the feet, hitting a takedown, grinding guys out against the cage, doing that wrestling ride type of thing where it's smart. You don't need to put hooks in. You don't need to get a guy flat on his back. You can just ride him against the cage, chest to chest, and you can win rounds that way. And it's very possible that he beats Clay Guida by doing that. But I think Clay Guida would be the best opponent that he's beaten by far. I think he'd be the best defensive grappler that he's beaten by far. And Clay Guida is just not a guy who gets out wrestled by many people. He's been around for 15 years fighting the who's who, and he's only been out grappled like 3 times throughout that entire career. So if I give a striking advantage to one guy, it's got to be Guida. Cardio has to go to Guida as well. Jiu-Jitsu probably goes to Guida. And, the only way I see Madsen winning this fight is by winning 2 out of 3 rounds by doing what I just said, hitting those takedowns, riding him against the cage. It'll likely be a really boring fight, but I just don't see Clay Guida accepting that bottom. He's going to be constantly scrambling, and I think Guida's going to be pushing him back on the feet. He's going to be landing some punches, and Guida looked good in his last fight against Michael Johnson. I mean, that was seriously like one of the best performances of Guida's entire career. The guy's been doing the same thing for 10, 15 years straight, but he really hasn't lost his step. I mean, he's still durable. He can still go the hard 15. He's still a great wrestler. And, I'd say that he's the side to be on here at plus 145. I just don't have much confidence in Madsen to win that grappling game plan. So what are you thinking about this one here? Definitely going to be some grappling involved in this one, Ozzy.
Yeah, man, this is a fight that I'll be honest, I've been flip-flopping a little bit on, recently. It kind of, me, like I'm kind of going in here wanting to fade Marco Madsen, especially with a guy like Clay Guida who's absolutely tenacious, is very, very, well versed in a lot of the in all aspects of MMA for the most part. Has a submission game. Can wrestle. Has very very good cardio. He's a a classic fighter there, like a kind of like classic archetype of kind of of kind of guy. But when I'm looking at this, I was rewatching that Michael Johnson fight, and I mean Michael Johnson's going down from a breeze, a few of those times, and some of the striking, of Clay Guida when you see it, it's just, how confident is Clay Guida going to be here taking on a guy like Marco Madsen who, you know, has that amazing Greco base, has been out for a while, has moved over his whole camp to fight ready. He's been training. I think he's one of Ali's guys, so he's been messing around with Henry Cejudo. He's been doing a lot. There's a lot of good fighters down there. And, what is the kind of improvements that Marco Madsen is bringing with him to the cage? Because, Guida, for everything that we say, right? We all like Guida, we all like these things. His striking is just, after all these years, he does not really have much of a game to fall back on in terms of, being able to find his range really well. He doesn't really kick very well. And then when he does throw right hands and stuff like that, he kind of like smothers his offense a little bit. So, it's tough. I think Guida's going to. The hope is that Guida, has the better cardio, starts outlasting Marco Madsen. But I think that Marco is going to come in here. I don't think he's. I think he's an intelligent guy. I don't think he's going to come in here looking for the kill very quickly because he knows Clay Guida's a freaking dog. So if Marco Madsen's gas tank doesn't get drained, early on, I feel that he, probably has some advantages here. I'm not very confident in the Clay Guida side. I see people, confident in it. I'm not feeling it as much. Because I do think that Marco is going to come with some improvements on the feet. And I really trust his wrestling, and I don't think the submission game is going to be, excuse me, that much of an issue. when they do throw down. So I think that if they do lock up, Marco Madsen is gonna be able to take Clay Guida down. Clay Guida has never been a stud wrestler. He's been taken down. I think Bobby Green had him, down or in some good positions for a little bit. And just countless guys. He's kind of like more of a guy who'll either outlast you, or if he does have a wrestling advantage on you, he will lean on it. Yeah, I'm looking back. Bobby Green took him down twice. So if he does have a wrestling advantage, he'll utilize that, against you. But I think that Marco Madsen probably ends up being able to land some takedowns, and it's going to be a matter of how tired is Clay Guida able to make him in holding him down. So right now, I'm not confident in this Marco Madsen. In the Clay Guida side. I don't think I'm going to end up with a ticket on him, and I think this will be a situation where I don't feel I'm going to regret it as much. This is different from me from, like, let's say a similar line in Darren Elkins versus Minner, right? Where you kind of have Minner maybe a little bit similar to Clay Guida, not as shot. I mean, more shot for sure, but kind of like a similar guy. But on that fight, I knew for sure. I'm like, hey, I definitely cannot, not have a ticket on Derek Minner. But here, I'm really not enthused to be betting Clay Guida here. So I think I'm gonna pick Marco Madsen to win this fight by decision. I think he has a little bit more of a measured approach and is able to, last longer than people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, I guess that's my pick as well. Official pick is Madsen decision, and he's probably a better live bet than pre-fight. And one last thing I'll note though is Madsen, a little bit of narrative going on here. After he broke his jaw versus Hubbard, the jaw surgery got infected. He had COVID recently, and his wife got diagnosed with MS, which is a pretty bad condition as well. So there's some out of cage factors contributing to Madsen here. Those are definitely some concerns, but I guess I'm still picking Madsen to win decision. And that's going to take us to the main event. Not an inspiring fight at all, but we got Jared Cannonier minus 156, Kelvin Gastelum plus 136, middleweight division. You can start this one off, Ozzy.
Yeah, so main event, or you just said main event time, right? Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we're Cannonier, okay. So two guys that got their butts whooped by, my boy Robert Whitaker. This is an interesting fight because I have not understood a lot of the Jared Cannonier love. I think that obviously that Whitaker fight I mentioned, it was at like a pick'em price. He was scheduled to fight Costa. Who was the favorite? I think you had a bet. You had a bet on Costa, right? I remember you told me about that.
Costa
correct?
was like plus 140. I think.
Yeah, so Costa was the dog here, and then he opens here plus minus 240 over Kelvin Gastelum. So I don't know I think it might be stats, like it might be because he drops a lot of guys, like that he's getting respect here from the bookies. But like I don't see why he is always lined like this as a favorite. Now Kelvin Gastelum, on the other hand, in that fight against Ian Heinisch, I thought that Ian Heinisch was a good bet. Kelvin was able to utilize that wrestling, and then he came into that Robert Whitaker fight, and he just got shut down in every way, shape, or form. And he said that a little bit in some interviews. He's like, man, he was just way better than I thought he was going to be. He was just so much quicker. He was able to keep him on the back foot, and and he was never able to get anything going. Now, Jared, I think Jared's here is going to come out probably looking to. I mean, I would think he's going to look to kick Kelvin. Kelvin has some of the skinniest legs I've ever seen on like a dude that's so like big up top. Like his legs are super skinny. But I feel this is a fight where Kelvin could potentially land that left hand from his southpaw stance. Is he like? But is Kelvin going to come in here looking for some kind of grappling? Like, I'm not so sure. The thing I'll give him credit for, his cardio looked great against Ian. His cardio looked fine against Robert. So, if he is able to commit to a wrestling heavy game plan and not tire out, I think that he definitely has some advantages over Jared, but we've really never seen Kelvin be the kind of guy that is able to hold guys down. He's been the kind of guy where he'll take you down and then maybe he'll latch onto a sub, he'll like go run around, take your back, and do stuff like that. But not too much like, solidify position, ground and pound, and do all that stuff to you. So, I think the fight here, it probably should be a little bit shorter. That's why you're seeing that line come towards the Gastelum side a bit. But I am not that Kelvin's a hard, like, everybody that trains with Kelvin, that knows Kelvin, they're like, man, this guy's talented, but he's a freaking lazy dude. Like he doesn't train that hard, and I don't know how focused he is because, man, this guy's losing fights. Like, it's apparent, at this point that he's not a top middleweight. So if he loses this fight, we might see Kelvin in Bellator next time. So I think there's potential for Kelvin to come out with a big performance. Jared, I still haven't been able to get a read on him, so I'm gonna probably pass on this fight. The over/under is set at 4.5, and it's pick 'em price. So maybe I'll try and take a shot at that. On the the over will be super sweaty, I feel, the whole time, just because, Kelvin's got a rock head, but, Jared hits hard, Kelvin hits hard. This is a low level. I think this is even a lower level main event than I'm less excited about this one than the Strickland Uriah Hall fight. Like, I just don't have a read on this at all, but, I definitely can't lay the juice on Jared, but yeah, I think this is a live bet fight, honestly, because at a certain point, I think this fight could easily be 1-1 going into the third round. It could be a back and forth fight, or it could end really quickly. But I think I would be interested maybe in like a doesn't start round 5 or something like that, just for like a violence bet, because I think both these guys have something to prove, man. They both got their ass whooped in that. Like, Robert Whitaker whooped both these guys' ass. I saw a clip that Jared Cannonier said Robert didn't beat him, the judges did. Man, Jared Cannonier got his ass whooped in that fight, and both of them have something to prove. So I think the under could potentially be a good spot.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I don't have any confidence in either side here. I think it's pretty impossible to have confidence in either side. It's like a fight where I don't think the tape does really a whole lot for you either. I think you can watch a lot of these guys' fights and like no conclusion is going to really jump out at you. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards the goes the distance than the under for you. I think both these guys are low volume. Kelvin especially low volume. Cannonier never been the full 5 rounds, never been in the championship rounds, so I'm not sure his cardio is going to hold up too well. So he might be trying to conserve that output. And with Cannonier fighting southpaws, he's had some good fights, he's had some bad ones. He got destroyed by Dominic Reyes up at 205, and then he's fighting Anderson Silva. Very efficient game plan, just smashed his leg with inside leg kicks and was able to finish him pretty easily there. And Gastelum does not check leg kicks, very heavy on his legs. So I definitely think that inside leg kicks in the opposite stance matchup will be there for Cannonier. The boxing is going to be competitive. I don't think either guy has a huge boxing advantage. Like you mentioned, Kelvin's insane toughness. It's probably going to be hard for Cannonier to get him out of there, even though Cannonier hits very hard. I think Gastelum might be impossible to finish at this point. And the wrestling, great point you brought up there. Gastelum probably does have the offensive wrestling ability to take Cannonier down. Cannonier doesn't have a great first layer of takedown defense, but he's really athletic, strong at getting back up to his feet. You saw Hermansson take him down, and Cannonier didn't give a fuck. He just got right back up from those takedowns, and Hermansson actually is a good top position player. So I don't think Kelvin Gastelum's going to have much success holding him down in the early rounds, but I think that explosiveness and the get-ups is going to start to fade after rounds 2 here. So if it's rounds 3, 4, and 5 and they're close rounds, I think the wrestling of Kelvin Gastelum could be the X factor in swinging the rounds towards him. So I'm kind of leaning this fight to go to a decision. I could see it being a split decision on either side. I would be interested to see what the line is there, because I don't know. I just see the striking being low output, not a whole lot's happening. The rounds could go either way in the judges' eyes, and that's been the case throughout Kelvin's career. The Till fight was 30-27 for one judge and 27-30 for the other judge. So his fights are so low output and boring that the judges could be seeing them completely opposite at times. So not really confident in either side here, but I slightly lean Cannonier. I think the inside leg kick of his is going to have success, and Gastelum is just so hittable that I think Cannonier's boxing also could have some success here, but not confident in the output or cardio of either guy. Very hard fight to be confident in, but I'll slightly lean with Cannonier, and I think a split decision is live here, so maybe look out for that prop. I'm sure it's on DraftKings at like plus 500 or something. Any other concluding thoughts for this matchup or this card, Ozzy?
No, I mean, the only bet I've made is Lingo, and that over. I think I mentioned in that Pichel fight. For the most part, I think it's gonna be a light card for me. I probably have a little bit more action on Bell. I don't really have that much action on Bellator either. They've been cutting a lot of fights there. But yeah, I think keep it small. Don't lay too much juice. I think Sasha. I'm looking at Sasha as well, and then Pichel. That line could get a little bit better. But it's a tough and Porter's up to plus 170 now. Like people are literally laying this these minus prices on Chase Sherman. I don't see it, so it's gonna be plus money for me again, and let's see where it takes us.
Yep, and just some concluding thoughts. Plus 425 on that split decision for the Gastelum fight, and Gastelum no scorecards plus 180. That's an interesting line. The dude is, like you said, rockhead, extremely hard to finish. Cannonier,
is it? It's what? It's plus
180 on on DraftKings right now. Let's see what it's at on Bet Online.
Wow.
It can't be that good on Bet Online. Oh no, it's plus 190 Bet Online.
Wow. That's telling you that that's what I'm saying. Jared Cannonier gets a lot of respect, man.
Yeah, I mean Gastelum is virtually impossible to knock out, and people always are saying his durability could drop off. I mean, he just got his ass kicked by Bobby. He got knocked down 5 times by Adesanya, but it just seems like the guy's durability is never regressing. So who knows?
Really, this love for Jared Cannonier is just really weird to me, man. It's just, I guess he fought some good. I mean, I'll give him credit. Some good strength of schedule. Like he's fought Jan Blachowicz, Dominic Reyes, Silva, Hermanson, Whitaker. I mean, well, all right, let's see what happens. I gotta see him beat another guy like that. Between Hermanson and Branch, they kind of both quit more or less. I mean, those both weird fights.
Yeah,
I gotta see it before I believe in Jared Cannonier.
And gotta mention Cannonier, big QAnon supporter, so probably not going to take the most easy path to victory. Probably not going to be thinking, like you said in that interview.
Kelvin's Mexican though; he probably wants to kill him.
True, and
the fact
but like if the man thinks he won the fight against Robert Whitaker, he's clearly delusional. So, you always got to be concerned about betting on a delusional fighter.
For sure.
But that's going to do it for this card. Not the greatest card. We still breeze through these 12 fights. Some interesting spots. I'm definitely leaning towards a lot of the underdogs here. But it's probably going to be a sketchy week, honestly. I could see myself going like 6 for 6 in picks this week or something. But my bets are on
6 or 6 and 6.
6 and 6. 6 right, 6 wrong. I like the Austins this week. Austin Hubbard, Austin Lingo, and Parker Porter for the win. Those are my thoughts, and that's going to do it. So thank you all for tuning into the podcast. Our 4th week now. We appreciate all the continued support. We've been getting a lot of compliments. I'm sure you've been seeing some too, Ozzy. There have been some nice things said about us. So I appreciate everyone out there giving us some nice compliments. And hope you all enjoy the card. Hope you all win some bets this week, and we'll see you before the next UFC card next week.
Peace.
Peace out, fellas.